How's it, everyone? Welcome to this Facebook Live, and it's funnily enough the first time I'm doing one in this group, and I'm testing a new piece of software. So if you can hear me and see me, I just want to make sure that everything is working the way it should. So if you can hear and see me, give us a like, and pop us a message in the comment. I want to make sure that I can see any comments or questions coming up, and I'm opening the floor. So if you have any questions about what it is that I'm doing or why I'm doing it or how I'm doing it, just ask them in the comments, and hopefully I'll get to them, get to the questions as we go through this thing. So, for those of you who know who I am, how's it? For those of you who don't, my name is Brad, and I'm a podcast junkie. I create lots of them. I also listen to a ton of them, and just fixated on how to grow audiences and communities around podcasts. And essentially, that's what my business is all about. So I absolutely love and geek out on this sort of stuff, and that's why I'm always testing and seeing what works and trying to get things working as best I can. And that's the reason for this little Facebook Live. So I posted something on Facebook earlier today with regards to just some of the numbers that I've or growth that I've experienced over the last couple of weeks. And this, funnily enough, to give you a bit of background on this campaign, is it's something I've tested and have tested for the last year or so, but I've tweaked it quite a bit, or made one tweak on it that's made quite a big difference in the last 12 days. And I think I finally got it dialed in. So it's still early days on this thing, but I'm going to test the living daylights out of it to make sure that this thing is sustainable long term. But I've got a really good feeling, and I'll tell you why I've got a good feeling on it in just a moment. But if you want to get into the whole strategy, then what I would suggest is check out this post on my website. Okay. How's it, Ian? Ian's just joined us. Nice to have you with us, Ian. So this is a post that I wrote. It was quite a while ago, beginning of this year. How I spent $5 a day on Facebook ads and tripled my podcast numbers in 3 months. The strategy is very similar, but the targeting's different to what I'm currently doing. So if you haven't checked that post out yet, just go to bradbrown.co, click on the blog, and you'll find it there. I think it's the second post that's there. You can't miss it. But that's pretty much just a bit of background on how I've done it and the technical side of it. But to give you some background with regards to what I've done over the last 12 or 14, 16 days. So the 12th of September is when I started this campaign once again. And this is actual numbers of this podcast. And to give you an idea, just on the podcast we're talking about, it's a triathlon podcast that's aimed at people who are training to do an Ironman. And it's not necessarily to qualify and race in the World Champs, which happens in Kona in October every year. But it's a pretty large audience of triathletes across the board. Most of them are Ironman athletes, but there are a lot of shorter distance triathletes involved there too. And the content in that space is really good. The guys love it, and the response has been fantastic, which helps. So the last 16 days before the 12th of September are these, from the 26th of August to the 11th of September. And you'll see the numbers that we've got there. You're sitting at 21,237 downloads. So it was pretty much flat on the previous period. And then I started running this campaign, and those are the numbers that I showed you a little bit earlier. So 32,929. It's up 35% on the same period, 16 days prior to that. So we definitely on something. An interesting thing that you'll see here are these sort of big spikes. And one thing I am chasing is binge downloads. I don't know if you're anything like me, but when I find a podcast I love, I go back and download a lot of them. And that's exactly what these are. So iTunes at the moment only allows you to back catalog 300 of your last 300 podcasts. So you'll see there's quite a few spikes of around 300. And if I go deeper into my numbers, that's exactly what it is. It's somebody discovering the podcast and going back and downloading pretty much the entire catalog. Although on this one, we've created over 400 podcasts in the last couple of years. So it's quite an interesting thing how that happens. From a targeting perspective, I am not, and I had this question in the Facebook group a little bit earlier, I'm not targeting South Africa at all. And I have quite a big reason for that, and it's probably a whole nother Facebook Live that I need to get into as to why I'm not targeting South Africa on this one. But I used to have a triathlon podcast that was specifically for South African triathletes, and not that we didn't get traction, we reached a large amount of the triathletes in South Africa, but we just could not grow beyond that. And that was when I looked at changing my niche slightly, niching down a lot more, and that's when we started getting traction on this podcast. So we still have a fairly big number of South African triathletes that listen to this podcast, but in the global scheme of things, it's tiny. I mean, if I scroll down on these, and if you look at the country numbers, so those are the top 10 countries that you should be able to see there now. The United States obviously top, and we're sitting just over 40% of the downloads coming from the US. But if you look at South Africa, we're sitting fifth, 696 downloads out of the 32,000. So that's just over 2%, which is tiny. But we've got this massive global audience. So that's just how the numbers have grown. So to show you what I've done and to give you a bit of background on what we've done, let me get back to looking at you. So I get lots of questions about Facebook ads, and I've done quite a bit of Facebook advertising in various aspects of our business, and have dialed in a lot of different strategies and targeting different audiences. And one of the things I love about Facebook advertising is you can actually track where your results are coming from. So one of the questions I get asked lots is, how do we make money off the podcasts, and is it advertising? The short answer is it's not advertising at all. Although this podcast all of a sudden is getting quite a bit of interest from advertisers. They're coming to us, we're not going to them, and it's generating a fair amount of income off advertising. But our main objective is to create a platform and a community off the back end of these podcasts. We essentially just use them as audio business cards. But Facebook advertising really allows you to dial in, and you can track where those sort of conversions and where the interest is coming from. Unfortunately, on this campaign, I can't do that because of where we're sending the traffic to. So one of the things that I wanted to try and test on this campaign was to make it as easy as possible for somebody to download or subscribe to the podcast. I don't necessarily want them to download one episode. I want them to hit subscribe. And I wanted it in as few clicks as possible. So we could have sent them to a landing page on our website, from there captured an email address, then sent them an email to get them to click on a download button. But I wanted to make that process as frictionless as possible. So if I could get it in one click, that if they clicked on our ad, it took them straight to a page where they could click on an iTunes subscribe button or on an Android subscribe button. And that's exactly what we've done. So we can't track that because we don't have access to the back end of a platform like iTunes or Google Play. So we can't put pixels and that sort of thing in there. But I'm testing, and I'm not testing with huge amounts of money, but it is working, so I'm starting to scale sort of money that we're plowing into it. So what I've done is I'm only advertising, and that post will explain it a lot more. I'm only advertising to people who are using iOS device, and it's only on mobile. So I'm not advertising on desktop. I'm not advertising on anything else except mobile. So somebody has to have a mobile phone, and they have to be running iOS. So those are the main things we're doing. And then the click on the link goes straight to iTunes, and it opens up the native podcast player within iTunes, and the first button they see is subscribe. So that's sort of the flow of what we're doing and where we're sending to. So to give you a bit of an idea on the Facebook ads numbers of what we're currently doing. So it's from the 12th of September. It'll help if I actually share my screen with you. So there we go. So from the 12th of September, as you'll see there, to the 28th of September, which is today, and it is this campaign here, the TKE Podcast Apple. We've run it. We've spent $907 South African Rand in dollars. You're probably looking at about $70, $80, and we've had 620 clicks, which is nothing. 146 per click. You convert that to dollars, and it's probably about 12 cents US cents a click, which is interesting in the fact that we're not targeting South Africa. So the only countries that we are targeting are the US, we're targeting the UK, we're targeting Australia, and we're targeting Canada. So those are the four big English-speaking triathlon nations that I want to get in front of. So we started out with a whole bunch of ads. As you can see, I think there were 12 in all. And it was just slightly different copy. There were two different ad sets with different copy on each ad set. The images were exactly the same, and we wanted to test which one got the best sort of traffic, and we let Facebook do its thing, and the one that was the winner was this one over here, the first one. So as you'll see, we've turned the rest off, and we are running just this one, and this ad has had 606 clicks at R1.45 a click. What does the ad look like, you might be asking? And let me actually show you it. So that's what the ad looks like here, and it's quite a long copy ad. And what we've done is from a targeting perspective, on the first post that we had on our website, we were targeting only warm traffic. So we had a Facebook pixel on our website, so if anybody had visited our website, we knew they were interested in triathlon, and then we retargeted them on an ad. And we got some results, and that's how we tripled our numbers last year over a 3-month period. But the problem with that is the audience wasn't huge. And what I mean by that, we burnt that audience out pretty quickly. So we were spending $5 a day, but our $5 wasn't reaching our full audience. So it was showing the ad to people more than once. And ideally, what happens when that starts happening on Facebook is your cost per click or cost per lead starts going up, because Facebook sees that people aren't interested in your ad anymore, so it becomes more expensive to advertise. So what we've done on this one is we're actually advertising to a cold audience. So we've taken that pixel of visitors to our website, and we've created a lookalike audience within Facebook. So the lookalike audience, I think in Facebook on those 4 countries, is probably about 3 or 4 million potential eyeballs that we can get in front of. So it was I don't know why I tested that, because I'm not a huge fan of running this sort of ad to cold traffic, but it's working. So we just let Facebook optimize as best as they can. They've got so much data that they're going to put this ad in front of the best people, and it seems to be working. It started out, the leads were, or the clicks were quite expensive, and then it slowly, as it started optimizing, it's leveled out at about R1.50 a click, which is quite interesting. So the ad is as follows. Ever wondered what it takes to qualify for the World Championships in Kona? This is what the best age groupers in the world do to get ahead, to give them the edge. And then what I've done is we've got a whole bunch of iTunes reviews on our podcast. I mean, there's well over 300. And I mean, that's also a Facebook Live in itself, how to use those things to grow numbers. But we've taken 5 of them here just to put a bit of social proof, so people can listen or read this thing and go, okay, cool, I've never heard of the Kona Edge, but here's triathletes who are saying pretty cool things about it. So we've almost used them as testimonials within our ad. And that creates a lot of social proof. And the call to action is hit subscribe now and don't miss a single episode. One thing you'll see as well with the Facebook ad, sometimes it gives you the opportunity to put a button in all of my experience. And again, you need to test this if it's something you want to try. Test with or without a button. In my experience on this ad, without a button works. So that's why I'm running it without a button. And you'll see there's a couple of guys have started commenting and that sort of thing. So we haven't reached a ton of people. 13,000 organically and paid, and our click-through rate is 600. So we're sitting on a click-through rate of just over 4%, which is quite interesting, because Facebook loves that. If you can get your click-through rate to above 2%, they are going to show your ads to a lot more people. You want to get your relevance score here, 9 and 10 ideally. We've got a 10, which is awesome, and that's why we're getting such cheap clicks. So again, it's showing it to the audience that is very, very relevant. So that's pretty much it from an ad campaign perspective and what we're running. It's still early days, like I said, only 2 and a bit weeks into this thing, but we have seen a marked spike in those downloads, as you can see. And the interesting thing as well, I mentioned those spikes. You'll see on the first couple, there's only a few, whereas on the second group, there's quite a few more. But you can actually also see in the weeds here, the lower spikes, there's a lot more activity here. So that's guys finding these things and uploading. And also, if you look at the podcast episode download numbers, so the top 10 for the month, essentially, for those 14 days, the highest is 1284 and the lowest is 632. If you look at them on this graph, it's vastly different. So we are getting a lot more people downloading a lot more podcasts. I mean, that's double there at the bottom. It's 1.3 there, 1.7 there. So it is a lot higher. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And hopefully that answers a few questions. If there are any questions, please pop them in the comments below. And I'm going to keep you updated on sort of what we're doing and the results we're getting. And yeah, if there's anything that you're doing, or if you're using Facebook ads and that sort of thing, let me know. I'd be keen to see what you're up to and the sort of results you're getting. But that's what we're getting, and we're not spending much. I think on this campaign we've got it down to 65 Rand a day. So looking at about $5 a day on this one as well, which is next to nothing. The plan is to scale it. We've got some revenue coming in from that podcast, and I'm keen to just sort of scale that up. So I don't necessarily want to make a ton of money off this podcast right now, but I want to get that audience up, because I know if I can get this audience to 100,000 downloads a month, 200,000 downloads a month, then we're going to have lots of commercial sort of opportunity with sponsors and that sort of thing, growing this thing long term. So in a nutshell, that's it. If there's any questions, pop them in the comments below. Thanks for joining me today. I see Pat Bransky. How's it, Pat? I hope the Netherlands is well today. Quintus also joining us. Thanks, Quintus. Any other questions, pop them in. I'll get answering them once we're done. But that in a nutshell is what we've done over the last couple of weeks on this podcast, and seem to be getting some cool results.